It's hard to talk about something that's been discussed for years and not restate what thousands have already voiced, yet somehow people like me put ourselves in this unique position. That's the process I thought about when it came to a retrospective of Devil May Cry 2. No, definitely, and please not that one. The original DMC2. A game ridiculed for its shocking quality and game design, unanswered questions of existence of certain changes, and the abhorrent development cycle, coming only off the heels of its predecessor about 2 years later. I think everyone watching has a pretty good idea, or at least the surface level knowledge as to why this game is tagged with every synonym for terrible, but while I doubted even doing this, it feels wrong to leave this out of the equation and move on to the third entry, and the fact that I will be singing the exact same praises for when that day comes anyway. So yes, this is when I put my foot down on the not elusive and horrific Devil May Cry 2. Showtime. I guess.
Devil May Cry 2.
When a game comes out and its abysmal quality spreads to the masses, the natural question of, well, how did this happen, is brought up. To understand that, we need to first look back at the first game. If you didn't catch my video on it, Devil May Cry 1 was a genre-busting classic. It repurposed an abandoned Resident Evil 4 and created a genuine masterpiece out of it. I talked about the excellent and intuitive combat, the effective pacing, the amazing progression, the cool protagonist. It all came together to make this stylishly crafted art. There was still room for improvement, however. The camera, even at the time, was considered problematic, the latter half of the game had a slight dip in quality, and the game was cited for being very hard. For all its faults though, it was still very influential and Capcom saw what the series could do. So inevitably, a sequel was greenlit. But this is where things would turn for the worst. The original team behind DMC were not tasked with designing the sequel, nor were they even informed of it, being instead helmed by Capcom's arcade division. I don't need to explain why it's a bad idea, do I? Unsurprisingly, the game's development was a complete disaster. Barely any work was being finished, manpower was being spreading thin, and there clearly wasn't a vision in mind for what they wanted to do aside from fixing the issues people had with the original. 6 months before all hell would break loose, Capcom pulled in Hideaki Itsuno to replace the original unknown director. According to him, genuinely nothing was done. It's a miracle the game was even released in a sellable state and made fairly good numbers sales-wise. In some ways, you kinda have to thank DMC2 for propelling Itsuno to take the reign of the series and forge it into what it is today. But where's the fun in that? Devil May Cry 2 opens with yet another monologue about Sparta. During said monologue, we see the new character of the game, Lucia, breaking into this museum to retrieve an important artifact. Demonic hordes arrive to steal it themselves, but Dante shows up just in the nick of time.
And now, the legend of Sparta has been inherited by his son, the demon slayer, Dante.
After a very brief exchange, Lucia marks the map of Vita Marley and encourages Dante to pay a visit. As expected, he ventures to the town and meets up with her mother, Mattie, a woman who was part of a clan that once protected their home alongside Sparta. Now she wishes for Dante's help in stopping a man named Arius from revitalizing the previously defeated Argosax the Chaos. Much like the first game, there isn't much story from this point onward, which normally is a bad sign for a sequel. You'd think they'd try upping their game in that department, but instead, it's a sign of things to come. Shifting focus to the gameplay is where we can truly understand the infamy of DMC2. While things seem normal at first, there have been some changes. Dante has a lot more movement options than he did before, as he has air hike by default and he can also run up walls. That last part doesn't really matter though, since it will never be used in a practical situation. It's when we reach our first battle sequence when this storm really gets going. Looking into the details of DMC2's combat is a natural entry point because it's the first of many plagues that harms the experience. Dante once again starts with his twin handguns, and we're also greeted to his iconic sword, Rebellion. Yeah, 3 did not debut his signature weapon, it was rather this game, even if it wouldn't be until that one where it was given purpose. On the surface, everything looks the same. You know, you slash or shoot through enemies, get high style rankings to amass more red orbs, and use said red orbs to buy moves of the divinity statues. Or at least, that's how it mostly works. The way Dante operates with his tools, as small as the changes may sound, serve to damage any chance of redeeming qualities. Let's start with how you engage with enemies. Triangle is again your main method of hacking away at demons, but now to execute unique attacks, you must shift the analog stick left or right mid-combo. Somehow, it's easier said than done, because I never felt like I was doing something different. But then again, this is also all you'll be doing, because Dante, and Lucia for that matter, never earn new weapons. They get different swords throughout their campaign, but they're basically just the exact same as your starting sword with minimal changes. You can't even buy unique moves. All you can customize with your swords is buy a damage boost. Therefore, playing as Dante is going to become very stagnant because he has little to no variation in combat from beginning to end. What made engaging with combat before is thrown out the window here because there's little to no incentive to play well. Well, like you could anyway with how slow and tanky he moves. The iconic stinger that had so much weight and power behind it, a sneeze is more powerful than this. The air kick's new to this game, prone to miss completely. But you know what? All these cons are enough to even remotely trivialize the series' selling point. Instead, there's one mechanic that does this in spades. Guns. Firearms in DMC1 were very one-note and functioned more as support. There was nothing stopping you from just firing away at enemies, and some had some very useful purposes. However, the game always disencourages poor play and incentivizes you to face your enemies head-on with your trusty devil arms. DMC2 makes you feel insulted for trying the baby way in the first place. The absolute sheer power of the firearms in this game is beyond comical. This is somehow more brain-dead than Sonic Forces. At least in that game, you got some mild visual feedback. Here, there's no sort of sparks to watch fly that mask the lamest and hollow feeling. You can completely, without punishment, stand in place and shoot whatever attempts to march towards you. And if that wasn't good enough, press that DT button and see what happens. This is it. This is the strategy you will use from Mission 1 to Mission 18. Like, did nobody think this wasn't okay? Guns by themselves trivialize combat, but this? What's the point? These enemies aren't really enemies. There's no fight. They just get juggled around like a sponge. Doing this won't increase your rank, but we've already gone over how much of that aspect is completely undermined by principle. I am just befuddled as to how this is even considered passable on a fundamental level. Like, this is just failing at video games 101 on a tremendous scale, and I haven't even touched upon anything else in the game. Not that there's much good to say past this point, because if playing as Dante was bad, then playing him in these missions is cataclysmic to one's mental health. DMC2 drops yet another staple from its predecessor, the Resident Evil style exploration. The world is far larger than before, but it very much is a linear romp through nothing, really. As mentioned previously, the designers wanted to expand the landscape and let Dante explore this massive city. There's room for a cool idea on paper, but the execution falls flat on its face due to how empty and flat the environments are. Artistically speaking, the final product of DMC2 just feels very uninspired. That first entry just made such an impression with its setting. It was small and undeniably cramped, but Malay Island felt like a real place we could go and visit. The atmosphere was unparalleled, every room had a purpose, and the castle was interconnected in a very natural manner. DMC2, while it can sometimes feel very serene or liminal, doesn't really have anything special going on. The rooms feel generic, the city is just a normal vacant city, ruins blend in. Variety is sparse here. Dante may be rocking a hard-ass fit, but that's really about it. And since they ditched the exploration, puzzles died along with it. Now these aren't a necessity for these games because it's all about the combat, and other entries are very much guilty of overdoing this aspect. Yet the puzzles in DMC2 are so one-note and simple that I wonder why it was even a thing in the first place. With all that said, there is one collectible that is a constant throughout 2. The Devil Trigger amulets. These don't do anything crazy, they just add special perks to the devil form, but I consider this to be a decently executed idea. It gets players to think of it as to how they can tailor the combat. If only this was an actual good game to use them on. And again, it's not perfect. Some amulets just royally suck, like the Quick Heart and Aqua Heart in Lucia's campaign. That last one is so specifically useless that Dante can't even unlock it. Continually where we left off is where we unsurprisingly encounter another big con of Devil May Cry 2, the bosses. There's 14 of these guys in Dante's campaign, and yet it should come to absolutely no surprise that Nightmare is a far more fun battle than any of these guys. This I find to be a case of where less is more. If you watch my last retrospective, I talked about how DMC1 made great use of its limited selection of bosses. Each one, with the exception of Nightmare, had a strong individual rivalry with the titular Devil Hunter. For example, Phantom was the initial trial by fire. If you wanted to be like Dante, you had to earn that by understanding how to perform stylish efficiency. Or even Nell Angela, the embodiment of Dante's reflection. Somebody you wish you could be as grand and skilled as he was. In DMC2, however, none of the bosses have any substance beyond being an obstruction, which could inherently be all well and good, but unsurprisingly, fighting all these guys is such a chore. The first major boss of the Tentacle Monster in Mission 3 is a perfect example. You spend so long shooting the tentacles that it might as well be your strategy. It's just tedious, which segues into the true horror of Mission 5. After running around the empty streets and dealing with the ever-threatening infested tanks, you have to battle perhaps the worst boss in all of the Devil May Cry saga, the Infested Chopper. I think a lot of you know how this goes. You climb up a building and along some rooftops just to actually fight it elsewhere. And you might just go into cardiac arrest because this I rest my case. You guys might have noticed how this is rather unconventional for my style of videos, and that's because I really can't do what I did for DMC1 due to how the game operates on fundamental level. If I were to do that, I would only be repeating myself 18 separate times. I can save that for the end though, as we're not exactly close to being done. After fighting 2 soul-draining bosses, Dante follows an Ouroboros chopper to an oil rig that he somehow manages to teleport to. The story of DMC2 feels so much less compared to that of an SNES game. Everybody is barely online and says little to no dialogue and cutscenes. Its predecessor didn't either, but there was a lot of character placed into what was there. Again, less is more. 2 just pretends it's an epic without any of the sauce required to make it happen. Things just happen with minor cause and effect. Dante especially took a nosedive in charisma, and it was definitely by design. I don't understand why turning him into a stoic plank of wood is any better than the witty and snarky Dante from the last game, but the decision is pretty in line with everything else, so it just fits, I guess. After dealing with a giant fire beast that cannot even touch you, Dante travels to the ruins of an ancient temple. And here we find more fun shenanigans, like the surprise butterfly boss with all the demonic larvae, or the absolutely ridiculous sphere room puzzle in Mission 12. I just want to know why. Also, by the way, I hope you played the game once before, because nothing really told you why you're even here. I'll tell you though, because that's what I'm supposed to do, and I'm a nice guy. To stop Argus X's resurrection, our 2 heroes need to gather the 4 artifacts before Arius can, which Lucia found 3 of them off screen, if you forgot she was also here. Although I can't find a more natural segue to talk about her, so I might as well do it here. Lucia was clearly a focus for the developers as they gave her an entirely separate disc for her side of the adventure, but the reality is that this is a complete fake-out. Lucia's campaign is just a chopped-up rendition of Dante's. She has way less missions than him, and the changes are super minimal in most instances. And when she tries to be more original, I don't know what's worse, this or the helicopter. Around the 3rd act, Lucia traverses underwater for 2 whole missions, and if you thought DMC1's underwater sections were atrocious, this is not just worse. This is the steepest drop-off I have ever seen. Lucia moves at the speed of molasses, and you might as well not even bother fighting enemies because her attacks are likely to miss completely. The cherry on top is this demonic fish boss where it's invisible for half the fight and you can't lock onto it. It's horrible. Oh, and on Dante Must Die, invisible the whole fight. I lost so many neurons processing that when I played through it. In general, playing as Lucia just feels lesser than Dante. Her attacks have a far shorter range, and while that doesn't really matter given how knives have the same stun power as guns, they're still way slower. She has some sort of skeleton of a story, but it's such a nothing burger. Lucia is a defective demon created by Arius, and therefore she concludes that to die like a human, she needs to stop him. Yeah, deep stuff. So if I had to choose which one to play, it's always going to be Dante. Not that I would ever want to anyway, especially at this point in the game. After being told to use the Arcana to stop Arius and save Lucia, who was captured off screen, Dante teleports into his office and just hands him all the components needed. Once we beat up Arius, we finally reach Dante's third act. And all I want to do is pass away. I really can't muster up the strength to rant about it any further. Mission 14 is personally my least favorite because you just run around the infested streets hitting blue orbs in the sky. As if there weren't enough signs for me to go play a better DMC game, they pull back Phantom from the first game and it's just... I think you get the point. After that, we rush through Arius' office for the final encounter where Dante suddenly comes back to life and does something. It turns out that when handing the Arcana to Arius during Mission 13, Dante swapped the coin for his own. This causes the ritual to momentarily fail and give Dante the time needed to strike Arius down with a really good line.
I was going to be the king of this world!
King? Yeah. Here's your crown.
However, I say momentarily because the ritual still ends up working and Argisax is now back at full power. Dante decides to take charge in destroying the demonic overlord in favor of Lucia. He does so in reassurance that she isn't a disposal demon but a human, because devils never cry. In her story, she finishes off what remains of Arius while Dante deals with Argisax in the other world. Both bosses stink. The first phase is just an amalgamation of all the previous bosses, but each one just has an open window that you can stand still and shoot at. The final phase does actually function like a proper boss though, but there's no reason why I'd harp on that when I can instead harp on the fact that the game is finally over. Don't worry though, if that hollow ending didn't make you feel dead inside, try out hard mode or Dante must die with both characters. It's not like you can still stagger them with guns. Oh, yes you can. For a first in the series, the Bloody Palace is also unlocked, and while... do I need to explain why this isn't fun here? However, the ultimate unlock is that once you finish hard mode, Trish becomes a playable character, and oh my god, why is the actual fun part locked behind 3 playthroughs of this game? She's not perfect, but it's more of what we wanted. She has the pausing combos, the stinger works, and Round Trip is back. But I just feel so insulted by this. Why is it that the gameplay we wanted to see is locked behind hard mode? I mean, as if this good praise is enough to save DMC2, it's still a slog no matter what. But what does this all mean? I've said numerous times that Devil May Cry 2 is abysmal and that there's not much to add to the conversation beyond that. So why did I decide to push through and make this episode? Well, for one, a bad game like this is very important when considering a series' future. DMC2 really could have been a franchise killer in the same vein as Sonic 06. Much like that game, there was still some light left. Itsuno didn't want this to be the end, and it's how we got Devil May Cry 3. That's perhaps the greatest action game of the 2000s. But if things turned south, that might have been it. So a chapter like that, it can't really be skipped, and that's why I mostly continue with this next game. I may have nothing to add, but in a retrospective like this, the whole picture matters. The devil is in the details, as they'd say. That's all the time I have to talk about this dumpster fire. I'd like to thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time with the final entry in the PS2 era, Devil May Cry 3. Until then, have a fantastic night, and as always, take care.